if you follow the news at all in Australia or elsewhere, you might recall that back in July of last year, someone got themselves arrested by police for trying to cross the New South Wales Victorian
Police say a
border.
Victorian man who...
Here we are. Across the New South Wales Victorian border. We're going to have a little look at that footage because some interesting stuff has started happening with this chap. Spoiler warning, he has joined the Proud Boys, which is a far-right organisation that has been deemed a terrorist organisation in Canada. So very interesting and worrying developments there. So let's get started with this little source from 7 News. Take it away.
Who was arrested at the border refused to turn back because he claimed the virus was fake. Jarrad Searby is now facing 6 months in prison for breaching the border closure.
Denied access into New South Wales.
Under arrest.
And with his wife filming, Jarrad Searby is taken into custody.
For what, babe?
Exercise my constitutional rights.
And border officers become babysitters.
It's not illegal to have
I
my
will watch
children.
the children because clearly you can't.
Thank you.
Without a permit, he refused to turn back yesterday.
Okay, just wanted to get that little bit of footage there. Now, he was saying that he was exercising his constitutional rights. That's not true in any way, shape or form. We'll get into that why. We'll also have a look at how he's been misled about that. There is a sovereign citizen movement that is unfortunately alive and well in Australia. Hopefully some getting good information out there will be able to help counteract that. Let's get Studley Rudley off the page there. I've got to say he does look a lot nicer with his beard. I am a strong advocate for chaps having good beards. Now, where is my linkies? There is my linkies. Gotta love the linkies. So that chap, Jarrad Searby, has recently gotten back into the news. He has joined the Australian wing of the Proud Boys, which, like I said, is a far-right organisation. They are Western chauvinists. There are a lot of kind of racist neo-nationalist types in there, but they are not explicitly racist. Their current American leader is a black guy who, funnily enough, used to be an FBI informant. So let's see how that goes for them over there. And as I said, Canada has recently declared the Proud Boys a terrorist organisation. So here we've got from The Guardian, good little news source. If you like reading news, go and support them, throw them some money. The Australian Proud Boys filmed threatening critics at a business and a home. US leader hails actions in New South Wales Victoria border region after local members of group deemed serious growing threat overseas post footage online. So, the US leader of the Proud Boys, which The Guardian rightly calls a neo-fascist group, has said that praised one of the Australian members as amazing after he filmed himself making threats at the workplace of a man who he believed made a negative comment about him on social media. Seems like a bit of an overreaction, but this is what people want to do, apparently. Members of the Proud Boys in the Albury-Wodonga area on the New South Wales-Victoria border. Now, anyone who's not Australian or just doesn't know their Australian geography very well, New South Wales and Victoria are obviously a pair of states. Albury-Wodonga is basically one city that's been split into 2 halves on either side. One side is Albury and the other is Wodonga. So they've popped up. Won't be going through all of the article here. Although I did see won't be going through the article here. Don't want to be just reading stuff because we've got some interesting bits to have a look at. So I went for a bit of a search when I read this news article. And I found that Jarrad Searby, or Jazz as he's calling himself, has a YouTube channel that he just launched around the day of that news reporting. Now, he did at one point have, before I got here and looked at this channel, he did have video of confronting the person at their home. However, he's taken that down because, you know, he was trespassing on private property, and it's probably not a good idea to have video up on a public platform of you committing a crime, even if that crime is a relatively minor one, like trespassing to yell at them. So let's have a... so he's posted... These are all 1 week ago. Let's see Jarrad's little statement here. So we've got Australian Proud Boys address Antifa doxing, and then we'll have a look at him going into a workplace and trying to get someone fired, you know, engaging in that cancel culture thing that the Conservatives claim to hate so much. Give it a moment to load. Shitty Australian internet.
My name's Jarrad Searby. I'm the president of the Proud Boys Borderland chapter here in Australia. As some of you may have seen recently, me and a few of my boys were doxed by Antifa. Our identities and businesses paraded around.
Now, according to the anti-fascist Albury Wodonga Facebook group that did the alleged doxing, all of the information that was shared was publicly available information that was shared by these people on social media. When he says doxing, I'm quite certain that what he's referring to is people applying the label of fascist to him and other people involved in the Proud Boys Borderland group, which, you know, matter of opinion, but I do think that the Proud Boys can be described as a neo-fascist organisation. Whether or not this chap here himself is actually fascist is something that I'm not certain, still on the fence about, but we'll have a look at some more supporting information that might help us make that decision.
And on an anti-fascist, so they say, Facebook page. I just thought I'd address the matter in person to say that we never hid our identity. We're Proud Boys. So Antifa may be parading it around like some big victory, but we never hid who we were, and we never will. Now, I co-own 2 gyms, Hard Knocks Combat, one in Yarrawonga and one in Corowa. Everybody's welcome.
So yeah, not doxing, because you can't dox with publicly available information that the people have made publicly available. That's just not how the word works.
We train martial arts there, MMA, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, you name it. Now, Antifa thought they had some big victory by releasing this information to people. Fact is, we don't care. We will release this information ourselves. So you can continue to dox us as much as you want. It really doesn't affect us. We're proud of who we are. But you're not. You hide behind your fake identities. So one of these Antifa members happened to leave a trail online that we found. As some of you may have seen, we went to their work today and demanded that they be held accountable for their actions.
Now, if this is something that you guys, you Proud Boys, don't care about, why are you going to people's work and trying to cause shit? Like, you claim to not care, but then you go and do stuff like what you've done. And we'll take a look at that video in a moment.
Actions include, you know, calling us racist, which isn't true, homophobics, which isn't true, and all sorts of other things, you know, to try to dissuade people from coming to our businesses and some of the businesses we're associated with. Some of the businesses mentioned in the article, I might say,
Proud Boys is a Western chauvinist organisation, so while that's not explicitly racist, it does believe that Western culture is the best culture. Proud Boys tends to be pretty strongly Islamophobic, and there is a strong Islamophobic current here in Australia. Now, I can't see the colour of this man's soul. I don't know whether or not he is personally racist or if he is personally homophobic. Given that he's associating with a neo-fascist group, there's a good chance that he is, but I can't make that claim solidly at this stage.
Had nothing to do with. For instance, one of them we just bought our meat from. Not even all of us, just me. So I don't know why Antifa think doxing these family businesses is going to do them any good, but this is our community.
Again, misuse of the word doxing. Just listing family businesses isn't the same as a dox. Like listing, well, he's calling them family businesses. Listing businesses that are doing business with neo-fascists isn't doxing them.
We're here. We're visible. We run the businesses. We coach the kids. We are well known. And we're not terrorists. We're not bad people. We're just Proud Boys. And we're proud of what we are. We're fathers, we're business owners, we're taxpayers. So we'll continue to be visible, we'll continue to be here. You can continue to give us publicity if you like, because that's all you're really doing. And you can continue to hold.
Now, at this stage, Jazz here has 177 subscribers, 1,305 views. If I was a properly sized channel, it might be a bit irresponsible for me to, be doing this and giving him a platform, but at the moment, I don't have a platform. This is like literally one of my first political videos that I'm doing, so I'm not really worried about that. Also, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and like I said, whether or not this guy is actually racist or bigoted, we're going to have a look at some of the stuff that he's openly written online, some of the stuff he's put out there, and he is at least, I would say, a bit unhinged, someone with very out there views on a few things around the world.
Hide, but know that when we find you, we'll do the same, okay? Cheers.
Okay. I do like that sinister wink that he ended on. So let's open up this here and see them going through. That is an impressive rat's tail. It's a dreadlock rat's tail, I think.
Yeah.
Jack Banks! Jack Banks here?
Vertical video.
Tell me how you mate, you know Jack? Jack Banks, where are you talking to?
He's IT.
IT, where's that?
Just down here, I'm not too sure.
His office?
Okay, so he's piked. Jack's not in.
Dean Jacob. Jacob's run the...
Is he around?
Is he around?
It'll be relevant to work time.
So we've had someone from this office that's been doxing our businesses.
Again, using that phrase doxing. Although, is it a dox to take publicly available information and say, hey, this place is run by fascists or people associated with a neo-fascist organization that has been deemed terrorist in, one of our major trading partners. Again, probably misuse of the word doxing. And coming in here to this guy's workplace, this is, it's quite obviously a vengeance thing, and you don't do that unless your nose is kind of out of joint over it. So his prior claims of not caring, again, are a bit odd.
Anti-fascist movement, some of the basics of the movement. There's been online trying to get people to go to our businesses, to go to Ballad butcher, that's what I do. So we just wanted to know that as long as your employees continue to do this, we're going to continue to come. So the service here today.
Okay, so he's saying that he's going to come in and harass people here, as long as employees speak out against the Proud Boys. That's pretty shitty. I mean, doesn't this guy believe in the ideal of free speech? Shouldn't they be free to criticize him? And, it's just free speech online. It's just people talking. Australians don't quite have the right to free speech, but we'll get into stuff about that later when we get into some of the sovereign citizen things that this person's involved with.
Come up to we're going to start protesting out the front until you can move. All right? His name's Jack Banks. All right, it's not acceptable.
Okay, they're going to be protesting out front of the dealership until someone loses their job over Facebook posts. That's real nice and positive, friendly stuff.
Running around bullying people and expecting to get away with it. There's plenty more information if you want it. It's an anti-fascist
Yeah, we've got all these screenshots, everything he's doing in work time and everything like that. It's listed around 20 businesses. I mean, obviously it's like you guys, but we work.
Yeah, yeah. Let me.
While
look
you
into
guys are working,
Let me look into it.
So, not acceptable, Jake. I've been identified. You've been identified too, Jack, alright? Mate, I'll leave it with you. We expect something to happen, boys, right? Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. So we've got neo-fascists going and intimidating people at workplaces.
Do we go down there?
Trying to get people fired. I would be fascinated to get to see the video of them going and harassing someone at their private property over this, but like I said, that video's been taken down. There is another video here, which is him doing a bit of an alt-right freedom rap thing, but we might get back to that a little bit later in this segment. Now, just a moment while I jump through to my links here. So, good old Jazz has been writing for a little while now, has been writing articles for an alt-right organization called The Unshackled. So The Unshackled have podcast stuff that he's been on. I've not watched through those at this time. They're, all an hour or two long a piece, and I do value my sanity. But I might go through some of their stuff in the future on stream. They seem like a good and entertaining option. But we've got some specific articles from him here. So first up, we have, no, that didn't copy the link. There we go. He's written an article, Make Australia Proud Again. And here he is with his flag. Most of these are pretty short, thankfully. This is from the 1st of January this year, so quite recent. In a world that is constantly getting smaller through the development of modern technology, the feelings of loneliness and isolation are becoming more apparent in the lives of Australian men. Now, this part is true. People are getting more lonely and isolated. That's everyone around the world. It's part of capitalist alienation, We have lost our sense of community. Love thy neighbour is a commandment that seems to have all but disappeared from the lives of everyday Aussies. That's why grass movement groups are now more vital than ever. Groups like the Proud Boys. Yeah, bad grammar, but we'll let it slide. Groups like the Proud Boys are bringing back a sense of belonging and brotherhood that has been systematically removed from much of today's society. Now, that's a very interesting framing there. Proud Boys just bringing back a sense of belonging and brotherhood. The Proud Boys are, like I've said, a neo-fascist organisation. They are Western chauvinists. They want to remove all other cultures from Western societies. Although the mainstream media paints these men as neo-Nazi right-wing terrorists, well, they have been involved in a lot of violence, mostly overseas. I don't think that, well, I think there's been some scuffles at Australian protests and things involving the Proud Boys, but I don't think they've done any domestic terrorism here yet. The truth of the fact is that in Australia, most of these guys are everyday Aussies. They are fathers and sons and are concerned about the future of our country and our children. They share a desire to connect with other men and reinstate the values of honour, family and community that are essential to our survival, and to be in a position, if need be, to protect our families. Now, there's a thing. Big thing on the right these days is signalling for potential civil war. Be prepared. You never know what's going to happen. You might need to do violence to protect your family, you and yours, so on and so forth. Men need a mission. We need to feel that we are achieving something, that we are part of something that is bigger than just ourselves. I encourage everybody, men and women, to get out there and be part of something bigger than yourself. Do something for someone other than yourself, and in doing, help reignite in yourself a passion and joy for life that isolation can take away from you. Now, The problem is the kinds of activities that he's encouraging people to get involved with. Like, there's nothing wrong with going and learning martial arts, but maybe don't do it with a neo-fascist organization that's very kind of culturally supremacist and has been declared a terrorist organization by one of our allies. Go out there, do community work, volunteer for your local soup kitchen. There's all sorts of wonderful things you can do that don't involve falling in with the alt-right types. Now, here we are. Next up from him, we have Plan to Survive. Oh, I need to block an element on this one before I show it, because he's included a photo. Oh no, that must be his next one. No, it's the next one that he's got a photo of him and his kids, and I don't want to show his kids on stream. That'd just be rude. So, Plan to Survive from October 2020. So we're kind of going back in time a little bit as this happens. Again, here we're talking about the possibility of civil war, societal collapse, so on. Just a few years ago, the very thought of societal collapse or mass civil unrest occurring in Australia was nothing more than a fantasy that the majority of Australians would not have entertained. Well, guess what? It still is a fantasy. We haven't gone through societal collapse or mass civil unrest. But in 2020, tensions have risen in our community on multiple different fronts, leaving a lot of people fearing that mass unrest may not be may not only be possibility, my apologies, but in 2020, tensions have risen in our community on multiple different fronts, leaving a lot of people fearing that mass unrest may not only be a possibility, but inevitable. The implications of what that may look like are lost on most Australians who are not prepared or equipped to survive without the help of the government. We at the Australian Men's Action Group AMAG Project want to make sure we use our resources and combined knowledge to help people in the community be prepared for any disaster that one may come across, whether it's of natural causes or man-made. Jarrad, Jazz, if you're watching this, please learn how to use punctuation a little bit better. Like, just put in some commas and stuff. I know it sounds nitpicky, but it really helps your sentences flow better when people are reading them, And let's have I don't think I've had a proper look into the AMAG project. No, it's Facebook stuff, and I don't have a stream-safe Facebook profile set up to look at that. Here are some tips we have put together to help increase your odds of survival if you were ever to find yourselves in a potentially deadly situation. Actively get involved in both physical and combat training. Only the strong survive. Here again, this is a very common strain amongst neo-fascist groups, preparing for conflict, for combat. Only the strong survive is a statement that finds particular truth in a survival situation. Possessing physical strength is extremely important in time of insecurity, especially if they are tasks that include manual labor, and being skilled in the areas of combat provide the confidence that comes with being able to defend yourself and the ones you love. Look, there's nothing with, training in the martial arts, training in combat, but Australia is not at particular risk of collapse now or anytime soon. And on the odd chance that our increasingly authoritarian right-wing government does decide to inflict mass violence on its people, a couple of, jiu-jitsu, boxing, or taekwondo classes aren't really going to cut it against the guns. And as Australians, we don't have access to firearms of our own, not on the same level that the US does. Unless, you're a farmer with a rifle. But even then, that's heavily regulated. 2. Network. Developing strong community connections is an essential key to survival. Humans have evolved to work together over the years. Social clubs and community organizations like AMAG give people the opportunity to pool resources and share knowledge, helping to build a social system that can support them in times of need. Now, point 2 is actually good advice. You should network with your local communities. However, I would advise that you don't network with far right groups. They tend to be, look, people on the right tend to be a lot more selfish and a lot less community oriented than people on the left. So, if nothing else, just from a practical perspective, networking with things like mutual aid groups is going to be a lot better at actually protecting you if there is a state of emergency that goes down. That and networking with right-wing groups is a great way to get indoctrinated into some really horrible and toxic ways of thinking. Educate yourselves. Everyday skills possessed by the generations before us are becoming lost arts. Things like gardening, hunting, building and preserving food, are now areas some people specialize in, though the majority of people rely on other people to take on what are often viewed as menial tasks. Though some people are experts in those fields, very few people are proficient in all of them. Look, if you want to learn some basic survivalism, you can. However, specialization is a very powerful tool, and even in a hypothetical collapse scenario, communities that work the best, that manage to survive the best, will be ones that employ specialization so that people can, you've got people who know what they're doing quite well at the head of the various projects. But, if you want to learn some things, if you want to, make yourself a garden or learn some construction techniques or become a better cook, yeah, do it. There's nothing wrong with that. And to have a plan. Those who fail to plan to fail. As a nation that is used to enjoying all the comforts life has to offer, we often forget to take into account what would happen if the rug was ever pulled from under us. We are so used to having Wi-Fi, power, and a supermarket to cater to all our needs that the skills that made our great-grandparents self-sufficient has all but disappeared from our society. So we need to consider what we do in our communities to keep our communities and families safe and fed. Now, this is he's starting to gesture a little bit towards something that a lot of fascists do, which is the imagined prelapsarian past. Anaka Bidle, welcome to the chat. Lovely to have you along. Which part is close to the 14 words there? Because he's got a lot of fashy stuff. So Arcan, so Acadaminal. Acadaminal? I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your username there. So yeah, the whole grandparents self-sufficient, the last article, yeah, Article 4, it is pretty close to 14 words. He gets a lot closer to 14 word stuff in another article that we're going to be looking at him. Arcadian Bell, thank you very much for that. It was looking at the run-on words was throwing me off. Thank you for coming along into the chat, Arcadian Bell. I think you might be my first stream watcher for political content. I'm just pulling up something here. If you're not followed as well, if you're not followed yet, if you don't mind hitting the follow button, I've just set up my alerts and I want to see if it actually plays. If you don't want to follow, then that's perfectly fine. I don't want to pressure you. I just want to see if the follow alert is functioning. So yeah, we've got this gesturing at an imagined prelapsarian past, which is a core fascist thing, the idea that we've lost something in the modern world, that we have become weak, and we need to return to the greatness that we once had as a culture. So these are just some of the very basic things we can easily do to start to prepare ourselves for the off chance that our government may not always be there to protect us. We need to be proactive. The lives of our families may one day depend on it. Again, Jazz, just put a little comma there. We need to be proactive, comma, the lives of our families. You're separating out the thoughts a little bit and just allowing your sentence to flow better. Seek out groups in your local community, such as the AMAG Project, and set your life on a path of self-empowerment today. Quote, surround yourselves with those on the same mission as you. Look, that last bit, again, sure, seek out community groups and stuff that you want to help with, want to get involved with, but things like the Australian Men's Action Group or the Proud Boys, it's just a really bad idea. Don't go doing that. Now, As I said, Arcadian Bell, we've got a... the next one is a little bit of a doozy. This one is An Australia to Fight For, it's called. Now, I do need to just do something on the back end here. Good, good. I did block out the image of his kids before, and it looks like my ad blocker is still recognizing that I made that request. So we shouldn't be doxing his kids with this, which, oh, yeah, cool, it's good. It's coming up as a broken link there. So, An Australia to Fight For. I am a lucky father of 3. I say lucky not because I'm married to a beautiful woman who loves me and supports me, but because together we share an opportunity to witness our amazing little creatures blossom as they take on their journey of this world. As a father and husband, it is my responsibility to love and protect my family, and that is what I intend to do. As we look around this country, it's easy to see... So, that first bit, we're already getting pretty 14 words here. Now, for those of you who don't know, the 14 words is a neo-fascist 14-word slogan. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. Now, I don't think he ever specifies white. Again, Proud Boys aren't explicitly a neo-Nazi group. They are a neo-fascist group. They do have a lot of non-white members, at least in other countries. I don't know what the membership balance looks like in Australia, but they are cultural chauvinists. So while they may not believe in securing the future for white children, they do believe in securing a Western cultural future for their children. So as we look around this country, it's easy to see that the changes that are sweeping across our society, not just political and economic, but social changes as well. And for most of us, the future that we're being offered is not the future we hope to provide our children. I'm sorry, mate, but citation fucking needed. The majority of Australians support the social changes that are going on. Things like marriage equality. The vast majority of Australians supported gay people being able to get married. Things like fucking... I believe the majority of Australians support trans rights or trans acceptance, or at least the majority are like, yeah, look, I don't really care. That's fine as long as they're okay. That's cool. So what you're doing here is constructing a public. You're creating an image, an illusion of what the public is and what the public wants, and that doesn't actually really map on to the truth of the matter, which, is good for progressive like me and is bad for regressives like you. Our Our children deserve to grow up safe and happy with the same rights and the same freedoms under the same constitution that our fathers and grandfathers fought and ultimately died to protect. Now, I don't think we've ever gone to war to protect our constitution. The closest would probably be fighting against the Japanese during World War II as they came through the Pacific. That, again, wasn't constitutional. That was more about sovereignty. Basically, all of the wars we've gone into is because our allies have either been aggressors or, in the case of World War I, have been on the defense, and I think World War II. So he's kind of stealing valor and trying to construct this narrative of glory here. People need to stand up and be accountable is something I often found myself saying when I turned on the TV and saw news stories about new laws, rules, legislation and restrictions placed on the lives of everyday Australians. I have said it so often, in fact, that I thought I can't possibly be the one saying this. I had to do something, and that belief is where I took my stand. I was arrested recently for attempting to drive across the New South Wales border from Wodonga to Albury without a permit. This is something I do every day for work. Although I am entitled to a permit being a border resident as an Australian, I do not need one. The Section 92 of the Australian Constitution protects our rights to travel between states without being impeded. Now this is false. I suspect that he's been misled by Sovereign Citizen information. So let's pull up Section 92 of the Australian Constitution. Fun little fact, as Australians, we barely have any rights. I think there are 5 rights. 2 of those relate to states and trade, including Section 92. Here we are, Section 92 of the Australian Constitution. Now, I can understand how the wording of this would lead someone to believe that it gives people the right for free travel between states. So I'm not going to say that he's a dumbass for making this mistake. And as I said, I'm pretty sure he's been misled by other people on this. So, Section 92 of the Constitution of Australia: trade, commerce, and intercourse among the states, whether by means of internal carriage or ocean navigation, shall be absolutely free. Now, this doesn't refer to people traveling. This is specifically about trade and commerce. And it uses intercourse here, which, yeah, hilarious sex word, but the Australian Constitution was written in the 1800s, and stuff like that happens. Words change. So let's jump down to the nature of trade commerce. Trade and commerce and intercourse are 2 separate concepts, as noted in Colville-Whitfield. The notions of absolutely free trade and commerce and absolutely free intercourse are quite distinct. I could be wrong here. Neither the clause or ordinary meaning of the words require the content guarantee the freedom of trade and commerce to be seen or governed by content of the nature of the freedom of intercourse. Here we are. Intercourse is the ability to pass to and fro among states without burden, hindrance, or restriction. So I will rescind me being what I've said about that. This is something I will research a little bit more and get back to people on. At the moment, it says... So yeah, to my understanding, the Supreme Court has mostly interpreted this... on the imposition of uniform duties of customs, trade and commerce and intercourse among the states, whether by means of internal carriage or ocean navigation, shall be absolutely free. But notwithstanding anything in this Constitution, goods imported before the imposition of uniform duties... Look, to my understanding, this has been interpreted to mean by the Supreme Court to be largely about trade and commerce. Interpretation in the courts. Park said at the convention, trading intercourse between its people, trading intercourse between federated colonies. Individual rights approach. So, the individual rights approach became the dominant view in Bank of New South Wales versus the Commonwealth, where any individual trader who was burdened in carrying on interstate trade could attract protection, but the freedom was not absolute. So unless the legislation directly burdened an interstate trade, commerce, or intercourse, or an essential attribute thereof, it would Section 92 would not be a breach. And here we are. It was subject to the exception of permissible burden and reasonable regulation. So under Australian law, we do have a common law system. They have found that there is exceptional for permissible burden and reasonable legislation. So in this case, they've said, yep, there's a quarantine. You live on the border. It's perfectly reasonable for them to require you to have a permit to move across the border because you're working on either side. Because, we've got a pandemic going on and Victoria was in pretty hard lockdowns and they dealt with that admirably. So yeah, that is as per our precedent-based system, that is a pretty reasonable right. I'm recording this part offline, as it turns out that this particular section of Australian constitutional law, Section 92, is extremely complicated. So, as pointed out by where is it? One of our former Secretary Generals, Section 92 is a stress trigger for judges, a source of income for legal practitioners, and a form of torture for law students. Suffice to say, it doesn't appear to provide the rights and protections that are being claimed that it does by sovereign citizen aligned people like our good old Jazz here. Now, so the Australian Constitution only provides 5 different rights. So that's Section 41, guarantees the right to vote. Protection of property against acquisition on unjust items is protected by subsection 5131. The right for trial by jury is contained in Section 80. Freedom of religion is protected under Section 116. And Section 117 prohibits discrimination based on state of residency. So those are the 5 rights that are kind of guaranteed in our Constitution. There is also an implied right, which the High Court decided that Sections 7 and 24 together imply a qualified right of political communication. So it's the closest thing we have to a right of free speech. Now, the Australian Constitution doesn't have the same kind of setup as the Americans do with their Bill of Rights. So, you know, the US and many other countries have set up a specific Bill of Rights that guarantees rights and protections. We don't have that. It just doesn't exist under our legal framework. And this seems to mean that even those things that are set up as rights within our Constitution are still a lot more subject to later law and interpretation than the more fundamental right structures of a lot of other countries use. Now, Section 92 specifically is titled Trade Within the Commonwealth to be Free, which tells you that it is primarily concerned with the free production of trade between different states. So, on the imposition of uniform duties of customs, trade, commerce, and intercourse among the states, whether by means of internal carriage or ocean navigation, shall be completely free. Now, the Australian High Courts have interpreted this and what the meaning of completely free is. So here we've got some information from the Australian government about different ways, different core rulings relating to Section 92. And one of the big things has been whether it's prejudicial and whether the restriction can be considered fair. So as the restrictions that states have been putting on their borders are universal, they're not targeting specific people, it's probably not it's not prejudicial. And there's a good reason as to public safety with why those restrictions are being put in place, which means it would satisfy that distinction of fairness, or sorry, it's a discriminatory burden of a protectionist kind, was from a court decision. So it's not protectionist. It's not discriminating how trade works between certain states to advantage one state over another. It's not discriminating against individuals. So this is likely these border closures that Australian states have been using do appear to be perfectly legal and reasonable. This took a little bit more extra research, of course, but it's always good to go and double check sources and information on a piece of something that's confusing and you can't immediately do in a live context. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to this addendum, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. There is some doozy stuff coming up. There are many acts and High Court cases and case precedents that support freedom of movement of all of Australia and state that the Constitution is still the foundation of our legal system under which all laws must fall, and any laws in contradiction with the Constitution are invalid and therefore do not apply. Well, like I said, we've got precedent-based case law here in Australia, and precedent has been set by our Supreme Court that reasonable restrictions can be placed. And, you know, plague quarantine is a pretty reasonable restriction. I informed the police that these constitutional facts, who obviously had no understanding of the topic. I took this from the statement, the Australia has no constitution, you're thinking about America. We do have a constitution, we don't have a Bill of Rights. Fun little fact. No Bill of Rights for us. At which time they proceeded to assault and arrest me in front of my wife and 3 young children. Look, we saw that bit of footage earlier. I wouldn't call that assault. That was just a standard arrest. Denied bail and imprisoned overnight. You were breaking a law, apart from what you're claiming here. Without breaking a law for doing something that people have done for all of Australia's existence, and something that had been completely legal just 10 hours before. Police repeatedly tried to intimidate me into submitting to their demands, but for the future of my children, my country, this is not something I was willing to do. Now, I realize that might sound like an overstatement, but the fact is this is the world we're living in. These are the battles we must fight, because every time a new law is made, another one of our freedoms is taken away, whatever it may be. Now, notice how he has law in inverted commas here. This is starting to move a little bit more into sovereign citizen territory. I was charged with failure to comply with Direction 789 COVID-19, and the prosecution is seeking a 6-month term of imprisonment. I will be fighting these allegations. I believe not fighting these illegal directives, they're not illegal directives, imposed on us would be unjust to the citizens of the country and would be of great detriment to the future of my kids and the grandkids that come after them, and all I'm sworn to go protect. Again, we're getting quite fashy feelings from this, protecting the future for our children, so on and so forth. This is why I'm willing to take the battle all the way to the High Court if necessary, and I hope I and the people will finally get some justice. Mine is not an uncommon story. All across our great countrymen and do some proofreading, man. All across our great countrymen and women are standing up against the tyranny being imposed upon us. These men and women are being demonized by the media, targeted by the police and persecuted by the government, are the true defenders of our society. They're risking their reputations, their livelihoods, and sometimes even their freedom, so that we may get back some of the freedoms we have up until so recently enjoyed. This is him getting, well off the deep end. So he's praising people who break the law. He believes that people have a duty to break the law and do dangerous things during a pandemic. We are living in the greatest conspiracy of all time. We are watching an Orwellian plot roll out before our eyes. We are inundated with a never-ending cycle of theories and keywords, some ridiculous, some plausible. We may never be sure of the facts. Use some punctuation. There's no commas or full stops in here. Sure of the facts, and we will never know for certain who is behind it or what the real agenda may be. But one thing we do know is that we are on the verge of losing the world we once knew, and all of us must decide if we're willing to accept the alternative be offered us, or if we will fight the world we know. All of that is one sentence. One giant, crazy, run-on sentence. Just proofread a bit, man. Like, I'll disagree with your ideas all you want, and it's not meant a dig at you. Just proofread. You can become a better writer. Just have to learn how punctuation works, dude. So yeah, this article, we're getting into a bit of Sov Sittery bullshittery, which is, it's what happens. Misinformation is a pandemic. And here we are. Now, in case you were thinking I was being exaggerating, I was exaggerating about the Sov Sit stuff. Here we have what you don't know might hurt you. The voice of the Australian Constitution. Asher Faye van der Sanden is a 28-year-old I'll give him a bit more of a bogany voice. Ashen Faye van der Sanden is a 28-year-old West Australian woman who was recently sentenced to 6 months imprisonment for sneaking across the Western Australian border from Victoria. You read that correctly. She was sentenced to prison for travelling from Victoria to Western Australia. In a society where rapists and pedophiles are routinely let off and given community correction orders, I would like to see some information on that claim. You know, you can link to claims there, mate. A young Australian woman who had done something millions of Australians had done legally without impunity every year up to 2020 has been sentenced to prison. Well, yes, she was breaking a law that was specifically put in place to, you know, help stop the spread of a pandemic. And the mainstream media is vilifying anybody who goes against the unlawful directives being enforced by state governments and by the corporations they hire to act as their police force. Well, no, they have the police force to act as the police force. The state has a monopoly on violence. That's how states work. Again, you read that correctly. The police in this country are not government employees, but rather private contractors hired by the government to arrest people and hand out fines for breaking laws and directives written in legislations and acts that have no legal standing in Australia. So, here you see, he's going full-blown Sov Sit. This is some high-tier conspiracy stuff. Loving it. But that's a whole other topic, and one that everyone should have an understanding of. If you don't, I implore to check out websites like Know Your Rights and Solutions Empowerment. This is where he is getting the Sov-Sittery bullshittery from. So, know your rights. Those who don't know their rights have none. Welcome, be careful of what you don't know. Everyone is at 3 different levels of understanding and knowledge of their lives. They know what they know what they don't know, and they don't know what they don't know. The first is a very comfortable place to be because you're very confident, blah, blah, blah. Did you know that personal tax is voluntary? No, it's not. Many taxes are mandatory, but personal tax is not one of them. How much could you have saved if you knew this? How much could you save over the remainder of your working life if you get ahead of this fact now? Check out our tax page for further details, where they advise people to break the law by not paying personal tax. Do you understand the actual steps, not all sorts of wild and crazy theories that the internet is full of behind the fraud that the banks commit every day? I mean, banks do commit fraud, but it's not what they're about to describe. I'm willing to bet that. Do you know how simple it is to simply lawfully discharge any kind of unsecured debt, i.e. a credit card or personal loan? How much debt you could eliminate from your life right now if you understood this important concept. And that's before we even talk about your mortgage. Check out our banking page to learn more. Again, they're just lying and spreading information. Do you understand the power of the Commonwealth Constitution right here, right now, in 2018? Oh my God, I'm reading the past! It's not some dusty old book that you may remember hearing about in Form 5 legal studies. It's the highest law in the land and is still used in our courts and parliament today. Let's have a look at your Constitution page. The Constitution. The important points to note about the Constitution and the underlying act. There's 9 parts, and the 9th contains the Constitution. Blah, blah, blah. Yep. So it's like anything else. It's just taking taking stuff. I can guarantee that it's taking stuff in the Constitution out of context or misunderstanding it. I'm not going to go through it right now on stream. This segment is already quite long. He claims that Ms. Sandin is not only a victim in the hands of a tyrannical government that is guilty of gross overreach of powers, she is now the victim of public vilification of the hands of Fabian socialists controlling this country. Fuck, I wish that socialists were controlling this country. Stuff would be way better. What's Fabian? The Fabian Society, a British socialist organisation, is purposed to advance the principles of democratic socialism via gradualist reform. Ooh, so sinister. Watch out for the Fabians. Along with controlling the media. The media isn't controlled by socialists. Most of our media in Australia is corporate controlled. We do have some government media, which is the ABC, but they're independent and do buy into capitalist realism. They're not a socialist organisation. I have friends who've worked for the ABC. They're just a business. They have a centre-right bias, believe it or not. It's what independent studies keep finding whenever the Liberal Party tries to claim that the Australian media, that the ABC is a horrible, horrible hive of leftist scum and villainy. No, they've got a centre-right bias. Blah blah. Yeah, this is just him ranting about his false understanding of the Australian Constitution and not recognising laws because they're not in that said document. Now, there is one more article of his that I want to look at. Blame it on the rappers. Here we are. So this is some asshole, probably racist, I think Canadian rapper who's a favoured darling of the alt-right. Here we're going to see some more fashy signalling. It does. You are correct, Arcadian Bell. The further right you get, the more you see leftists hiding in the bushes when really that's just people. For the last 20 years, music videos have been a major influence on our culture, with up to 50% of marriages ending in divorce and a society that has continuously been plagued by alcoholism and drug epidemics. All societies have been plagued by alcoholism, and we don't really have drug epidemics that much here in Australia. There's nothing wrong with people being able to divorce. Divorce is a good thing. Maybe people should work on having better relationships or not getting married for the wrong reasons. That'd be nice. As well as being the unwitting participants of any number of social experiments, broken homes, and a lack of role models, has been a far too familiar story in the underbelly of society. I think that's meant to be far too familiar story, but that's an easy mistake to make. I'm not going to deride him for that. This one actually has commas and punctuation in it a little bit. I like that. See, this is, I think, your first article for The Unbound. Punctuation. Do it, Jazz. Punctuate. In today's world, athletes, actors, and recording artists have revered and commonly put on a godlike pedestal. Often, their influence has become a replacement for parents who are, for whatever reason, unable, unequipped, or simply too distracted to raise their kids. Here's a hot tip. It's mostly capitalist alienation that makes for absent parents, because parents have to work all the time. If parents didn't have to work as much, they could be with their kids more, and that'd be great. Too distracted to raise their kids or provide them the tools necessary to become strong, smart, and compassionate men and women. What I know about Jazz, I wouldn't call him compassionate. He seems to have a bit of hate and rage in him. Which, I hope you work through your anger problems, mate. As I entered my teenage years and most adults were concerned with Y2K, hip-hop music was establishing a strong grip over the Australian youth. Eminem had just released his first album, and artists like Tupac and Snoop Dogg had young Australians acting like they were African-American gangsters. Drugs and violence were promoted, and becoming a criminal was something that we aspired to. This message was supported by the government as they sought S-O-R-T. Run it through a spell check, man. As they sought to institutionalize the youth and destroy the family structure that was at the heart of our very society. being a lower class area, these problems I was used to, and it took no time to see the effects of these influences on my life and helped to establish a life of violence and crime that would plague me for the next 15 years. I like that, I'm glad you're using the past tense there. I hope that you're not in a life of violence and crime anymore, though being involved with a violent organisation like the Proud Boys that has been deemed a terrorist organisation by Canada doesn't fill me with confidence for your future, but I hope you do genuinely manage to change your life. And despite multiple terms of incarceration and lots of nights pondering the choices that led me here, it took my wife and the birth of my first daughter to finally realize the follies of my ways. Oh, I'm glad that was a growth moment. I decided to be better. I began to educate myself. I listened to podcasts like the Joe Rogan Experience. Oh dear, Joe Rogan, don't take your ideological positions from Joe Rogan. He is an ideological void and a sponge. He just agrees with whatever listener he has on and barely ever pushes back, to the point where the few times he does push back, when someone says something that is really too egregious, even for him, they look genuinely shocked. And I made a choice to spend the rest of my life trying to improve the life of others. Which is, again, it's a noble idea, but from what I've seen, I don't think you're executing that very well or in a healthy direction. I'm lucky with the help my wife and daughter, I managed to drag myself out of a place where most people get stuck. The youth of today face similar problems. Time for the conspiracy stuff. The globalists that are controlling the world are using the music industry to infect the brains of our children, and the role models being sold to us are little more than marketing gimmicks with a lack of creativity and an agenda to further the global chokehold that the Illuminati, or whatever you wish to call them, has placed on our world with, up until now, little to no resistance. Now I begin to understand why he's gone and joined the Proud Boys. Jazz here has a predilection for conspiratorial thinking. Yeah, look, there are bad people who, are doing bad things to the world. One of them is Rupert Murdoch. I was talking about in the last thing, but it's not like we have a secretive cabal of globalists who are controlling the world using the music industry and films and stuff. That's just not true. It's just the forces of capitalism and a few mostly public dishonest actors. With the emergence of platforms like Facebook and YouTube and more and more people streaming their music opposed to buying CDs, record labels and their satanic overlords have less control over the content we are exposed to than ever before. Independent artists can now use these platforms to build their fan base, thus creating their own revenue streams, giving them an opportunity to deviate from the general passage of drugs, sex, and violence. I mean, record labels are, kind of corporate capitalist assholes, but they're not satanic. Arcadian Bell, let's see what you've said. Getting jailed for breaching COVID regulations, great way to be a family man. Yeah, look, that's I don't know if he actually ended up serving any time. I tried to find some information on that, but Australia doesn't really publicize its sentencing results. So I don't know what's going on there. What really gets me about that is that there was just an easy way for him to get a permit. But he was like, no, I'm going to take a principal stand and get my ass arrested, and then act all surprised when his ass got arrested. It's just, nah. Enter Tom McDonald. So Tom McDonald, this guy is the darling of the alt-right rapper. I'm not going to be playing any of his music because it will be in the Content ID systems. And though I am wondering if he has... Does he have a record label? There's a Facebook post there, record labels and Big Pharma are working to blah, blah, blah. Oh no, he's self-released. Cool. So Tom McDonald does meet the standard of purity there that Jazz has set out. Enter the picture, Tom MacDonald. He doesn't look like your typical rapper. In fact, there's nothing typical about him. But he may be one of the most important artists of all time, addressing some of the most controversial social issues we are facing in an intelligent and articulate way, and constantly calling out the Illuminati and exposing their agenda and naming some of their key players directly. So I've had a little bit of a look into Tom MacDonald. He does seem like he's probably somewhat racist. He released a Photoshop of him done up as a black guy for one of his things. He has lyrics that focus around very controversial topics. He claims to not be racist, but this happens. He has also apparently claimed that the rapper Eminem is actually a series of clones. So that's a pretty out there position that I like. Tom MacDonald has waged a war for the people against the globalist. Oh, there's just one. There is one globalist. It's gigantic, spherish globalist. And he has literally put his life on the line to try and bring about change in today's culture. He has fought hard to stay independent against multiple offers and big money contracts. I mean, that's not really fighting hard. He's an artist. He has creative control of his music. He can just say no. Like, just not doing a thing isn't fighting hard, but good on him for sticking to his guns and not picking that up. So his message cannot be silenced. He talks about conspiracies, racial issues, government control and self-empowerment. He lifts the veil on the facade that the mainstream would have us believe. He is a real threat to the globalist and the agenda one globalist, just the one. Look, maybe I can get behind this conspiracy that there's just one person who's really fucking it all up. It's Dave, isn't it? Fucking Dave. Dave the globalist. Fucking Dave. Agenda they are pushing. He has built a fan base of millions of people all over the world. He is young, smart, aware, and cannot be silenced or brought. He has the potential to open the minds and the eyes of a whole generation, sparking a revolution where the people take back power from evil forces that are currently in control. Tom MacDonald is one of a kind and needs to be protected, and his message needs to be shared. The more kids stop listening to the likes of Lil Wayne and G-Eazy and start replacing it with that of artist like Tom, the more empowered they will become, and maybe we will start to see a shift in the culture towards common sense and decency. Maybe there is hope for us yet. And the more excited Jarrad Searby gets, the less punctuation he uses and the less breaths I get to take while going through his content. Grabbing. We're going to go back to Jazz's YouTube channel here. So look, I don't want more people to follow the example of this apparent racist, pro-far right musical ideologue. I've listened to some of his music, and I gotta say that Tom's music is technically proficient. It's not bad rap. It's just that his topics and viewpoints seem to be really fucking toxic. So I'm gonna jump through here. Now, Jazz has followed recently, 10th of Feb, in the footsteps of his hero, Tom. And he has put up a rap. So, Aussie ProudBoy Borderland President One Take. Listen to the very opening of this. Now, Jazz, mate, if you watch this, I think it's great that you're getting into rapping. I think it's great that you're getting into art. I've not listened through all of it. I don't know what my critiques are going to be, but I hope you do find an avenue for self-expression and exploration through music and rapping and art. That'd be great. Hopefully it can be a vehicle for self-reflection. Hopefully it can be a way to help you start to realize that you've gotten yourself involved with a really hateful and potentially violent group and set of ideologies, and that you do appear to be heavily misled on a few things that are forming your foundational ethics. But Let's have a look at this little rap here.
Music got the white kids thinking that they're black. Got the black kids thinking that we own something back. Fucking cancel culture, man, we had enough of that. The only time that they will listen.
Sorry, rapping about how bad cancel culture is gets me.
When you tell them to rap, took away their brain and what we gave them back was crap. And then they disrespect and fucking glorified the trap. Shit between their ears but lack the spine in their back. Honour and integrity.
So, technically proficient, not bad. You know, nice sense of rhythm and flow. Shit between the ears, but no spine in their back. Now, this is not something that I agree with. He's, you know, valorizing bravery, possibly gut reaction over intelligence and thought. Now, I do think we need to be brave. We need to have spine. We need to stand up to what we believe. But intelligence, analysis, and understanding and compassion are really important. And yeah, let's see.
What the fuck is that? You wanna be a man that understand how a man will act. You wanna be a man, you need to stand. When under attack, you need to lend a hand and give it.
So now he's talking about being a man. Need to stand when under attack. Sometimes the manly thing to do is just fucking run. Look, if you're in a situation where people want to fucking kill you, the best form of self-defense is just to get the fuck out of there. You know, sometimes you do need to stand your ground and fight with someone, but there's nothing intrinsically manly about fighting or GTFOing.
Underdog a patch, you need to give a little if you wanna give a little back. Should put you on my knees and give you little cunts a smack before you sacrifice the future and you throw it.
I do not condone hitting your children. I believe there have been a number of studies into this. So he's talking about put you on my knee and give them cunts a smack. Spanking kids is a bad idea. There have been studies, I believe, that have shown that it has very negative outcomes. It just makes the kids distrust you and internalize that abusive power dynamics are an acceptable way of enforcing one's will. It's not, I shouldn't do this thing because it's wrong and I understand why it's wrong. It becomes, I shouldn't do this thing because if the bigger person finds out, they will hurt me. Which means once they become the bigger person, they are more likely to reproduce that behavior. I'll put aside some time in the future to go and have a look at those studies.
In the trash, what you think you're essay, man, you need to learn some class. This is your only warning, understand that it's your last.
I think people deserve multiple warnings.
We got 12-year-old girls walking around like I'm easy. 12-year-old boys walk around like I'm easy, man.
Now, I will agree that kids shouldn't be wearing sexualized clothing. I think this is something that Jazz and I can probably agree on. It's fucking creepy, and companies, organizations, and individuals that promote it should be yeeted into the goddamn sun. So I'm glad that towards the end of this little video I'm doing, we've found a point of commonality with Jazz.
And I swear this culture's so sleazy. I look around, what I see, it don't please me. I'm starting to think the game really needs me. Smashing all the rappers you see on the TV. Man, I've got to tell you, this shit is so easy.
Yeah, not bad, Jazz. I'm glad you shared that bit of art with us. I'd probably like you a lot more if you just, you know, stuck to the world of art and music and rapping and didn't go posting conspiracy-filled neo-fascist screeds online and running, you know, becoming the regional head of a neo-fascist, partially terrorist international org. You know, just I just hope that he picks a path of life that doesn't make things worse for the people around him. But that's a wrap on this segment, and let's migrate on to the next one.